My name is Margaret Hale, and I'm 72 years old. I live alone in a small cedar house overlooking Pinewater Lake, the place where I raised my daughter, Lily, where she took her first steps, learned to swim, and whisper her secrets into my shoulder. I never imagined that same daughter would one day tell me, in a quiet, practiced voice, not to come to her wedding. She said her fiancé, Andrew, felt I might make things uncomfortable. No examples. No explanation. Just those cold words delivered like a chore she needed to check off. At first, I thought I heard wrong. Then I heard him in the background, telling her, "Just get it done, Lily." I hung up the phone with a kind of silence I didn't recognize, one that settles into the bones. I've weathered a lot in my life. Widowhood, illness, loneliness. But this felt different. Not just painful. Wrong. And the strange part? The more distance Lily put between us, the more I felt something tug underneath it, like a thread pulling free from a sweater. Something her fiancé didn't want me to find. I always thought I knew my daughter's voice. Even as a baby, Lily had a way of sounding like she meant every syllable she learned. And when she grew older, her voice softened into the kind of tone that could make even hard days feel lighter. But lately, these past few months, her voice has been different. Careful. Tucked in at the edges. Almost borrowed. I first noticed it on a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind where the lake outside my window looks like brushed silver and the birds haven't decided yet whether they want to sing. I'd just finished watering the little herb pots I keep by the kitchen window when my phone buzzed. "Hi, Mom," she said, but it felt like she had taken her voice and folded it in half. "Morning, sweetheart," I answered. "You sound tired." "Oh, no, I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly. Then she laughed a small, tight laugh that didn't belong to her. Just a lot to keep up with. There was a muffled sound behind her, and I heard Andrew's voice, low, clipped. "Tell her you'll call back. We're late." The old me, before widowhood and before lonely evenings had taught me patience, might have asked who was late for what, and why her fiancé sounded irritated this early. But I've learned sometimes you don't need to ask questions to hear the answers. You can hear them in tone, in silence. "I'll call you later," she whispered. Not love you. Not even talk soon. Just a whisper, like the words weren't hers to hold anymore. After the call ended, I stood there with my hand still resting on the counter, staring at the lake. The water moved in ripples I didn't understand, like it was being disturbed from underneath. A soft, reflective moment. I told myself she was just busy. Wedding planning can swallow even the most grounded people. When I married Lily's father, I remember feeling like I was living inside a spinning carousel, flowers, dates, guest lists, napkin colors. It's easy to get swept up, to forget the world outside your partner's shadow for a moment. Maybe that's all it was. Or maybe it was the beginning of something I didn't want to see yet. 2 days later, Lily and Andrew came to visit. Their car pulled up around 4 in the afternoon, when the sun hangs low and turns the pine trees a deep gold. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door with a smile already on my face. Andrew walked in first like he owned the doorway. Lily followed a step behind, her smile stretched thin. She wore a lilac dress that looked pretty on her, but she kept tugging at the sleeve like she didn't feel comfortable in her own skin. I hugged her, and she stiffened ever so slightly, just for a moment, but enough for a mother to feel it. My heart pinched, the kind of pinch you don't show on your face. "Mom, the place looks nice," she said softly, glancing at Andrew, actually waiting, for him to nod. When he did, she smiled wider, as if she'd been given permission. Something inside me shifted then. Just a small shift. Like a picture frame nudged on a wall. Easy to miss if you're not looking. We sat in the living room, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor. My little cabin isn't fancy, but it's full of history. Lily's framed childhood drawings hang beside my husband's old fishing hat. The rocking chair he made for me sits in the corner, its wood polished smooth from years of use. This home holds my life, like cupped hands. I poured lemonade for everyone and sat down across from them. Lily kept her hands folded neatly in her lap, fingers interlaced too tightly. Andrew draped his arm over the back of the couch behind her, his posture relaxed in a way that felt rehearsed. We wanted to talk about the wedding, he said, smiling the kind of smile that looks good in pictures but not up close. Oh, I asked gently. He cleared his throat. We've decided to keep things simple, minimal, clean. A more curated aesthetic. I blinked, unsure what part of that required my involvement. Lily looked down. Andrew's hand tightened slightly around her shoulder. It means, he continued, we think it's best if you don't insert yourself too much into the planning. Andrew, Lily whispered, but he didn't acknowledge it. I kept my voice soft. I didn't realize I was inserting myself. He waved a hand. Not in a bad way. Just your style is very sentimental. And we're aiming for something more modern. More elegant. Sentimental. A polite word for old. For outdated. For doesn't fit. I understand, I said, though truthfully I didn't. I wanted to ask what part of my daughter's childhood home, or the memories hanging on these walls, offended his idea of elegance. But I stayed quiet. The emotional spike came a moment later. Lily attempted to say something, her lips parted, her shoulders lifting as if to speak, but Andrew glanced at her. Just a quick, sharp look, and whatever she meant to say collapsed inside her chest. She whispered, "Yes, Mom, we just wanted to look right." Those were not her words. I knew my daughter. Her heart never lived in phrases like that. The rest of the visit was short. Lily hugged me goodbye with trembling fingers. Andrew barely looked back when they left, keys already in hand, voice low as he muttered something I couldn't hear. I watched their car pull out of my driveway and down the dirt road until the dust settled into silence. Later that evening, after dinner, I stepped outside to water the flowers near the porch. The sun had dipped behind the trees, leaving everything tinted a soft amber. That's when I saw it. Sitting on the wooden step, half hidden in shadow, was Lily's childhood locket. The small gold heart she had worn since she was 6. The one her father gave her before he died. She never took it off, not for swimming, not for sleeping, not even for prom. Losing it wasn't possible. Leaving it behind wasn't something she would ever do. My breath tightened. I knelt down and picked it up gently, feeling the cool metal warm against my skin. I opened it and saw the tiny faded photo inside, Lily at age 5, missing her front tooth, smiling up at her father like he was the whole world. A soft, reflective ache washed through me, deep and quiet. Why would she leave this? Had she meant to? Or had it slipped off in a moment of stress she didn't show me? Then something else struck me harder. She hadn't even noticed it was missing. That told me everything I needed to know about where her mind had been. I stood up slowly, the locket clutched in my hand, and turned toward the window. And that's when the suspense beat hit. Through the thin curtains of my living room window, I saw headlights approaching. Slowly, deliberately. My stomach tightened, expecting perhaps Lily had returned. But it wasn't Lily. It was Andrew's mother. Her car eased into the edge of my yard like a shark gliding silently through shallow water. She didn't get out. She just sat there, engine running, staring at my house with eyes sharp enough to cut through the glass. Then she leaned toward the passenger side, motioning someone forward. My heart hammered when I saw Lily emerge from the shadows beside the car. Andrew's mother pointed, straight at my house. At me. Her gestures were sharp, precise, like someone pointing out a stain that needed scrubbing. Lily kept shaking her head, small movements at first, then more frantic. Whatever Andrew's mother was saying, it was making my daughter shrink into herself. I pressed my hand against the window, breath fogging the glass. Then Lily's mother-in-law-to-be leaned in close, far too close, and whispered something into her ear. Something long, urgent, poisonous. Lily's shoulders sagged. Her arms dropped. Her head lowered like someone had pressed a hand against the back of her neck. Andrew's mother pointed at my house one more time. And Lily nodded. Not a strong nod. Not a willing nod. But the nod of someone surrendering to pressure they didn't know how to fight. My throat tightened with a pain I had no name for. As their car pulled away, leaving nothing but settling dust and deep night silence, I realized something certain and cold. Whatever was happening to my daughter, it wasn't about a wedding. It wasn't about aesthetics, or style, or embarrassment. Something was unraveling underneath the surface, something she wasn't allowed to tell me. And this quiet moment on my porch, was only the beginning. The morning after I saw Andrew's mother whispering to my daughter in the dark, I woke earlier than usual. The lake was still, the surface flat as polished stone, mirroring a sky so pale it looked almost translucent. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long moment, listening to the quiet pulse of the house. My cabin has always been steady, wood that creaks in familiar ways, floors that sigh when you walk across them. But that morning, even my home sounded hesitant, like it was waiting for me to take the next breath. I wrapped my robe around myself, walked to the kitchen, and set the kettle on. Some people need coffee to wake up. I need sound, boiling water, wind brushing the windows, the soft footsteps of my own routine. The kettle hummed slowly, rising toward a whistle, but even that comfort felt thinner than usual. I kept replaying last night. The way Lily stood near Andrew's mother like a child caught doing something wrong. The way she nodded, small, defeated, when told something I wasn't meant to hear. And the locket, God, the locket, sitting on my porch like something that had been shaken loose from her life. I couldn't stand the distance anymore. By 9 o'clock, I'd changed clothes and poured tea into a travel mug. I drove into town, down the winding roads that used to make Lily laugh when she was little. She would stick her hand out the window and try to catch the wind. I smiled at the memory even as my stomach tightened, because that carefree girl had grown into a woman I barely recognized these days. When I pulled into Lily's driveway, her car was there. Andrew's wasn't. Good. I walked up to the door, knocked gently, and stepped back. For a moment I heard nothing, no footsteps, no movement, no hint of life inside. I thought she might not answer. But then the lock clicked and the door opened a few inches. "Mom," she said softly, peeking out. Her eyes told me everything. Puffy, red-rimmed, tired. The face of someone carrying a weight that wasn't hers. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, keeping my tone light. "I wanted to check on you." She hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Come in, but just for a minute." I walked into the living room, a space that used to feel warm but now looked like it had been packaged for a catalog. Minimalist furniture, neutral colors, nothing soft or personal. No photos of her childhood. No memories of her father. Nothing with roots. She sat on the edge of the couch. Not in her usual place, curled up near the throw blanket she used to love, but perched like a visitor in her own home. "Lily," I began gently, "is something wrong? Something you haven't told me." She lifted her chin, inhaled shaky air, and then I saw it, her shoulders straightening, her expression smoothing into something practiced. "No, Mom. Nothing's wrong." The lie didn't belong to her. Even her voice felt coded in someone else's rhythm. "I watched you last night," I said quietly. Whatever Andrew's mother said. Her eyes widened, and she cut me off so fast it felt like a slap. "Mom, stop. Please." There was fear in her voice. Not irritation, fear. I sat down across from her, keeping my hands calm in my lap. "Honey, talk to me. I'm on your side." She pressed her lips together, then looked away. Out the window. At the floor. Anywhere but at me. Then, in a tiny voice, she said, "Mom, you're too emotional about all this. The wedding has a specific look. Andrew says you don't really fit the aesthetic." Aesthetic. I swear for a moment the world tilted. My heart didn't break loudly. It just folded over quietly, like old paper. And you believe that? I asked softly. It's not about believing, she whispered. It's about what's best for the day. I stared at her, at the girl I'd raised. Those aren't your words. She flinched. Not much, but enough. Suspense beat. She looked toward the hallway, toward the closed office door Andrew used for his meetings, as if checking whether he might step out and correct her. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Lily, I said, even softer now, look at me. She finally met my eyes. And there it was, the truth, buried so far down she couldn't say it, but shining through in the way her breath stuttered. I should get ready, she whispered. We have appointments today. The conversation was over. Not because she wanted it to be, but because she had been taught to end it. I stood. I love you. She didn't say it back. Not because she didn't feel it, but because someone had made loving me inconvenient. I walked out with my heart aching, the kind of ache that comes from something deeper than rejection. The ache of watching her child shrink inside her own life. Outside, as I reached my car, I heard the front door open again. Mom, I turned. She didn't step outside. She didn't raise her voice. She only whispered, her face frightened. Please don't make things worse. Worse. As if me loving her, caring about her, protecting her, was the danger. I drove home slowly, letting the lake wind calm me, hoping it could. But some hurts don't soften with air. They sit heavy, unmoving, waiting. I parked, walked up the path to my cabin, and told myself to breathe. Soft, reflective moment. I sat on the porch steps and watched the ripples on the water. My husband used to tell me that the lake never lies. Its surface always reveals what's underneath if you watch long enough. I thought of Lily's trembling hands, the locket she left behind, the way she repeated Andrew's words like they were lines in a play. The lake that morning was restless, uneasy, reflecting something buried. I went inside and tried to distract myself by frosting a small lemon cake I'd meant to save for Lily. But the sugar wouldn't settle right, and my hands kept trembling. I set the frosting knife down and sighed. That's when I heard voices. 2 women talking near my porch. Quiet, but clear enough through the open kitchen window. I froze, wiping my hands on a towel, leaning closer to listen. So sad, really. Poor Margaret. Did you hear she chose not to go to Lily's wedding? Wants to give the young couple space. I gripped the edge of the counter. She told you that? No, Andrew did. Said she's taking a step back, not wanting to make things about her. Honestly, that's good of her. Some older parents get clingy. My throat tightened. Clingy. Absence rewritten as overinvolvement. Love rewritten as intrusion. Truth rewritten as shame. I leaned back against the counter, closing my eyes against the sting behind them. They weren't just lying to me, they were lying about me. And people believed it. Emotional spike. The part that hurt most wasn't the lie, it was that Lily hadn't defended me. Either because she didn't know what Andrew was telling people, or because she wasn't allowed to. After the voices faded, I stepped onto the porch to clear my head. The boards creaked softly under my slippers. I walked down the steps, letting the cool air settle against my skin. Then something caught my eye. An envelope, placed gently on the first step, right in the center. Not blown by the wind. Not dropped. Placed. I hadn't heard anyone approach. No car. No footsteps. Nothing. Subtle suspense beat. The handwriting on the front wasn't familiar. Neat. Controlled. No name, just Margaret. I picked it up slowly, my breath trapped in my chest. The paper felt warm, as if it had been held recently. I opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a single small sheet. No signature. No explanation. Just one sentence, written in a hurried, slanted script. He's hiding something from her. I stared at the words as the lake breeze brushed against my back. He's hiding something from her. Not from me. From her. From my daughter. And whoever wrote this wanted me to know, quietly, secretly, urgently. The wind rustled the pine trees overhead, a low whisper moving through the branches. I folded the note slowly, holding it against my chest as if studying my own heartbeat. Micro cliffhanger. When I looked out toward the tree-line, I felt it. Someone had been watching. And whoever placed that envelope wasn't done telling me the truth. I didn't open the envelope right away. I just held it for a long moment, standing there on my porch with the morning light warming my shoulders and the cool lake breeze brushing the edges of my sweater. I had the strange sense that whatever waited inside that paper wasn't something you rip into casually, not something you look at standing up. So I carried it inside, placed it on the kitchen table, and sat down slowly, palms flat on the wood. The kettle I'd left on the counter clicked as it cooled, a tiny sound that felt almost too loud in the silence. For a long moment, I just stared at the envelope, at my name written in that careful, deliberate handwriting. Whoever wrote, it wasn't trying to frighten me. This wasn't the rushed scrawl of someone panicked. It was tidy, precise, almost respectful. That made me more nervous. Finally, with my heart tapping hard beneath my ribs, I slid my thumb along the seal. The paper parted cleanly. Inside were several folded sheets, thicker than regular pages. Newspaper clippings. Photocopies. Documents. My hands shook just enough to make the edges flutter as I unfolded the first one. A headline stared back at me. Local business couple questioned in financial misconduct investigation. And beneath it, a grainy black and white photo of two people walking out of a courthouse. I leaned closer. I knew that face. Andrew's mother, 10 years younger, hair pulled tight, lips pressed thin into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Behind her, Andrew's father looking down, avoiding the cameras. My breath hitched. The article mentioned client complaints, investments gone missing, under-the-table arrangements, and pending charges. But nothing about guilt. Nothing about time served. Instead, the article ended with a single line. The couple settled privately out of court. Privately. Which, in my experience, usually meant expensively. I sifted through the other clippings. All of them circled around the same story. Accusations, court dates, sudden withdrawals of complaints, a tidy settlement, the disappearance of evidence. The kind of scandal people with money can wrap in a gold bow and bury under layers of reputation. But one line from a later article hit me like a nail through the chest. Family spokesperson denies wrongdoing, claims the allegations were fabrications from disgruntled ex-employees. Fabrications. The same word Andrew's mother had used to describe me. Disruptive, inconvenient, something to be swept aside. I moved to the next page. A photo, blurry but recognizable. Andrew himself, younger, maybe early 20s, stepping out of a courthouse door with his mother's hand gripping his arm. His jaw clenched, his expression carved out of stone. That was when a cold understanding slid through me. This wasn't just about keeping me away. This wasn't about wedding aesthetics. Or my cabin. Or my age. This was about image, control, appearance, and a past they needed to protect at any cost. A soft, reflective moment came over me like a wave. I thought of my husband, gone 14 years now, his gentle laugh echoing through the memory of our little house. He always said, "The truth may be quiet, but it never disappears." I whispered those words now, feeling their weight in my mouth. "Maybe that's why they want Lily away from me," I said to the empty kitchen. "Because they know I'd see it." I gathered the documents into a neat stack and ran my hands over them, smoothing the creases. My eyes drifted to the lake outside, shimmering like nothing bad could ever happen here. I wished the world reflected the water, but it didn't. Not today. Midday sunlight dipped lower, slanting across the floorboards. I knew I couldn't sit in my kitchen forever staring at ugly truths on paper. I needed clarity. I needed grounding. So I drove into town. The streets were quiet as I pulled up near the courthouse. The same place these documents had once passed through. A place of truth on record, even if buried by money. I didn't go inside. I just sat there in the parking lot, staring at the brick building and wondering how many stories like this never saw daylight. My phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Busy today. Can't talk. No heart emoji. No love you.
Not even a mom.
Just the factual tone of someone checking a box. I typed back, I miss you, but didn't send it. What good would it do? What space was there left for my voice? Instead, I closed my phone and rested my forehead against the steering wheel, letting the heat of the day seep through the windshield and soften me. I wanted to cry, but I didn't.
Not yet.
On my way home, I stopped by the small market near the lake. I needed milk, fruit, something mundane to ground me. Inside, it smelled like fresh bread and lemon cleaner. Familiar. Safe. I filled my basket slowly, trying to breathe. As I reached for a bag of apples, I felt someone step beside me. Margaret. I turned. It was Helen, a long-time neighbor. Kind woman. Gray curls. Warm smile. But today her smile was strained. I wanted to check on you, she said softly. I heard what happened. My chest tightened. What did you hear? She hesitated, lowering her voice. Just that you decided not to attend Lily's wedding. People said you didn't want to overshadow the young couple. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Overshadow. Another lie. Another script. Another layer Andrew had plastered over the truth. I never said that, I whispered. Helen's eyes softened with worry. I knew it didn't sound like you. I told them it didn't make sense. Emotional spike. For a second, I couldn't speak. The pain wasn't anger. It was the sting of watching my relationship with my daughter rewritten in the mouths of strangers. Taken apart. Painted over. I thanked Helen and hurried out with my groceries. The moment I reached my car, my hands trembled so much the keys slipped from my grasp and clattered onto the asphalt. I bent down slowly, pressing my palm against the car door to steady myself. Someone was working very hard to erase me. That evening, I didn't cook. I didn't read. I just sat on the porch watching the lake shift into its nighttime colors. Purples, blues, shadows. The world turning quieter, as if it were listening. As I sat there, something in me began to settle, not in defeat, but in clarity. They wanted me silent. They wanted me away. They wanted me uninvolved.
Why?
Because I knew Lily before them. Because I knew what real love looks like. Because I could see when something was wrong. Suspense beat. I walked back inside just as dusk turned the sky violet. I set my groceries on the counter and was about to wash my hands when I heard something, muffled voices drifting through my open kitchen window. At first, I thought it was just neighbors walking by. But then I recognized the voice.
Sharp. Polished. Cold.
Andrew's mother. I froze. The wind carried her words clearly. Just keep her out of the way. As long as the old woman stays away, our past stays buried. My heart slammed once, hard. They weren't just afraid of me being emotional. They weren't afraid of my clothes, my cabin, my sentimental nature. They were afraid of the truth. The truth on those papers. The truth they'd paid to hide. The truth they didn't want anywhere near their perfect wedding. I moved quietly toward the edge of the porch, peering through the shadows. Andrew's mother stood near a black SUV, phone pressed to her ear, pacing with agitation. She's suspicious, she hissed. Yes, I know. But we can manage it. Lily trusts us. She always has. I felt that sentence slice through me like glass. Lily trusts us. Not me.
Us.
My breath caught, but I kept still, hidden behind the porch pillar. Then came the final line, sharp, dripping with calculation. Just make sure Margaret stays out of this. One wrong move, and everything we built could collapse. I stayed there, holding onto the wood railing like it could keep me steady, watching as she ended the call and slid into the SUV. The taillights glowed red as she drove away, leaving nothing but dust and the echo of her words. Micro cliffhanger. I stepped back into the quiet of my house, the documents still on my table, the lake whispering behind me, knowing with cold certainty. They weren't just hiding something from me. They were hiding something from my daughter. And I was the only one who knew. I didn't sleep much after overhearing Andrew's mother on the phone. Her words replayed in my head like a splinter I couldn't pull out. As long as the old woman stays away, our past stays buried. I lay awake long after midnight, staring at the ceiling while shadows from the lake rippled across my bedroom walls. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's face at 6 years old, running barefoot through the yard, laughing, wearing that crooked little ponytail she insisted on doing herself. The ache of that memory pressed deeper into my chest. Because somewhere between that barefoot little girl and the woman rehearsing apologies on the phone with her fiancé, someone had taught her to look away from me. By the time dawn seeped into the sky, something inside me had settled. Not peace, exactly, but a kind of quiet decision. A mother doesn't need to shout to protect her child. Sometimes protection is simply the act of paying attention. So that morning, I made coffee, poured it into the chipped blue mug Lily painted when she was 10, and sat at the kitchen table with all the documents spread out in front of me. The photocopies, the newspaper clippings, the timeline of events Andrew's family had erased from public memory. The more I looked at them, the more patterns I began to see. The scandal broke open in early March, 10 years ago. The settlement happened in May. The first missing funds report appeared in June. Andrew's father had quietly stepped away from leadership at that time. By July, the story disappeared from print completely. I rubbed my temples, tracing those dates with trembling fingers. And then I remembered something Lily told me months ago, before the engagement ring sparkled on her hand. Andrew wants to leave the past behind. I thought she meant old relationships or personal mistakes. I didn't know she meant something with lawyers, settlements, and courtroom hallways. A soft, reflective moment washed over me. I looked out at the lake, still, smooth, silver under the morning sun. I wondered if Lily felt trapped, if she felt alone, if she felt ashamed for things that weren't even hers to carry. I whispered to the empty house, "Where did I lose you, sweetheart?" My voice cracked more than I wanted. Around mid-morning, I pulled out my old address book, the one with coffee stains on the corners and a page so worn it threatens to tear every time I open it. I flipped through until I found the name I hadn't contacted in years. Marie Thompson. Court clerk, retired. Friend for half my life. Keeper of more truths than most people ever want to know. Marie was one of those people whose memory worked like a filing cabinet, precise, cold, and frighteningly fast. If someone lied under oath 20 years ago, she could tell you their exact expression. I dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm with surprise. "Margaret? Goodness, it's been too long." "I need your help," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. There was a small pause, the kind an old friend gives when they hear something trembling behind your words. "Come by," she said gently. "I'll put on a pot of tea." Marie lived in a small yellow house on Sycamore Street, tucked between oak trees and hydrangea bushes that always bloomed too early. When I pulled into her driveway, she was already on the porch, leaning on the wooden railing, peering over her glasses like she'd been expecting me long before I called. Inside, the house smelled like peppermint and old paper. She led me to her living room where sunlight spilled across stacks of books and half-finished crossword puzzles. I laid the documents on her coffee table. She adjusted her glasses, leaned forward, and began reading them with the sharpness of someone who had spent decades catching buried truths. After a few minutes, she exhaled deeply. "Oh, Margaret," she murmured. This was a nasty case. I folded my hands tightly in my lap. "So it's real." She nodded slowly. The allegations were serious.
Fraud.
Manipulation of client investments. The kind of scheme that only falls apart when someone gets too greedy or too sloppy. She tapped one clipping. They settled privately, yes. But only because they were desperate. If this had gone to trial, they would have lost everything. I swallowed hard. Emotional spike. And Andrew? Marie sighed. He wasn't officially named, but he was present during several meetings. His mother swore he had no knowledge, but I remember seeing him in the courthouse. He looked like someone who'd been coached within an inch of his life. I stared at the stack of papers as if they were a pile of stones crushing Lily's future. Marie leaned back, studying me. Why are you digging into this now? I hesitated, feeling my throat tighten. They don't want me at the wedding. They told people I chose not to go. They've painted me as some emotional burden. I whispered, and Lily, she's slipping away from me, Marie. Her face softened. You're not imagining this. If his family wants to bury something, any threat must be removed. Meaning me. She nodded. You've always been sharp, Margaret. And mothers see everything, especially lies. A silence stretched between us, heavy and familiar. Then she placed her hand over mine. Be careful. Families like that, they don't just hide their secrets. They craft whole worlds around them. As I drove home, her words echoed through me with a heaviness I couldn't shake. The sun was dipping low, turning the lake pink and gold. A breeze rustled the trees, lining the cabin's path, whispering something I couldn't quite name. I parked, stepped onto the porch, and took in the stillness. It was time to act. Not with confrontation, not with shouting, not with demands, but with preparation. Quiet preparation, the kind that mothers have mastered since the beginning of time. I went into my bedroom and pulled out a small wooden box from the top shelf of my closet. It was simple, hand-carved, smooth, and warm with age. My husband made it the year Lily was born, with a tiny engraved rose on the lid. I set it on the bed and opened it slowly. Inside were memories. A lock of Lily's baby hair tied with a faded ribbon. The hospital bracelet with her tiny name printed crookedly. A dried daisy she once tucked behind my ear when she was 4. The first tooth she lost, wrapped in tissue paper. A photo of her father holding her, both of them asleep. One by one, I lifted each item, letting its weight settle into my heart. Then, carefully, I began adding everything she would need now. The newspaper clippings, the court documents, the photos of Andrew's family leaving the courthouse, the timeline I'd created, and in the center, I placed a small folded note written in my husband's handwriting, the same note he wrote on Lily's 10th birthday. Always choose someone who's honest. Someone who sees your heart, not your potential usefulness. Someone who never asks you to shrink. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that note between my fingers. A soft, reflective moment washed over me. I pictured Lily's face when she was 10, smiling with 2 front teeth missing, hair wild from running, eyes bright with possibility. Where was that girl now? How had she gotten so lost? And why hadn't I seen the signs sooner? I felt the sting of tears, but I blinked them back. Tears wouldn't help her now. Only truth would. Suspense beat. The sun had fully set by the time I returned to the kitchen. I placed the filled box on the table, smoothing my hand over its lid as if sealing a promise. I planned to deliver it quietly, to place it into the right hands before the wedding day could lock Lily into a future she didn't understand. But just as I reached for my phone to check the time, it buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No greeting. No name. Just one sentence. If you love your daughter, give her the truth before he does. My breath caught. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, the box sitting in the warm glow of my kitchen light behind me. Someone else knew. Someone who was watching. Someone who understood the stakes better than I did. Micro cliffhanger. I stood there frozen, phone in one hand, the wooden box in the other, realizing with sudden clarity. The danger wasn't coming. It was already here. I didn't sleep the night after that message. I sat at my kitchen table with the box in front of me, running my fingers over its carved rows again and again like a prayer. The message, "If you love your daughter, give her the truth before he does," kept flashing in my mind, sharp enough to sting. By dawn, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to meet Lily somewhere public. I wasn't going to slip the box under her car seat or hand it to her during a rushed hug. I was going to walk straight into the world she now lived in, the house she shared with Andrew, and place the truth right at the center of it. Quietly, calmly, like a mother who refuses to disappear. I arrived at their white-paneled house just before noon. My heart was steady, but my hands trembled as I walked up the driveway. The neighborhood was silent, too perfect, like a postcard no one really lived in. Lily's car was parked out front. Andrew's wasn't. Good. I rang the doorbell. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then I heard footsteps, slow, cautious, and Lily opened the door. She looked beautiful, but tired. The kind of tired that sits behind the eyes. She wore a cream sweater and soft blue jeans, but her shoulders were curved inward, like she was shrinking to fit something she never asked for. When she saw me, her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Mom," I met her eyes gently. "Sweetheart, I just need a moment." She glanced behind her, then back at me. Fear flickered across her face. Not fear of me, fear of consequences. "Mom, Andrew doesn't." "I know," I whispered. "That's why I came while he's gone." Her breath hitched just a little. Slowly, she stepped aside and allowed me in. Inside, their house felt cold. Not temperature cold, emotionally cold. Too tidy, too staged. No scattered books. No cozy blankets. No hints that a real woman with real history lived here. Just minimalism and silence. I followed Lily to the living room. She perched at the edge of the couch, twisting her hands together like a child waiting for bad news. For a moment, I simply looked at her. At the daughter I once held through fevers, heartbreaks, piano recitals gone wrong. The daughter who used to run to me with joy bursting like sunlight from her chest. She hadn't run to me in a long time. Quietly, I placed the wooden box on the coffee table. Her eyes widened. "What's that?" "Your history," I said softly. "And a truth someone is trying very hard to hide from you." She hesitated, truly hesitated, then reached for the latch with trembling fingers. The lid opened with a soft wooden sigh. Inside, the first thing she saw was her childhood locket, the tiny gold heart she hadn't taken off from ages 6 to 17. She sucked in a breath, her fingers hovering just above it. "Mom," her voice cracked like thin ice. "That was on my porch the night Andrew visited," I whispered. "You didn't forget it. Someone wanted you to." She looked up sharply, confusion and hurt mixing in her eyes. Next, she lifted the folded letter, the one her father wrote on her 10th birthday, describing the kind of man he hoped she'd someday choose. I watched her read it, watched her lip tremble, watched her shoulders rise and fall with silent breaths, watched a piece of her break, but break open, not apart. Then she whispered, "Dad, oh Dad." My heart clenched, but I stayed silent, letting her have that moment with him. After a long minute, with her breath still shaky, she reached deeper into the box. Her fingers brushed the documents, the court records, the newspaper clippings, the photos of Andrew's mother outside the courthouse. She froze. "What is this?" she whispered. "It's the truth," I said gently. "About the family you're about to join. The things they've hidden. The things they don't want you to know." Her hands shook as she lifted the first newspaper clipping. Her eyes scanned the headline. Then the next article. And the next. And the next. The room felt heavier with every passing second. I could almost hear her heartbeat breaking. Finally, she whispered, "Andrew told me. He told me he didn't want old drama ruining our fresh start. He said," she swallowed hard, "he said you were stuck in the past. He said you'd embarrass us." That last word cracked something inside me, something small and old and tender. Slowly, I reached across the table and touched her hand. Sweetheart, you have never embarrassed me a day in your life. She shut her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. Emotional spike. Then the front door clicked. Both our heads snapped up. Lily's breath froze. Andrew's voice floated down the hallway, casual and confident. Babe? I forgot my wallet. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. Lily panicked, scrambling to close the box, but I placed my hand over hers gently. No, I whispered. Let this truth breathe. The footsteps stopped in the doorway. Andrew's face appeared, first curious, then startled, then twisted with something dark and sharp. What? He said slowly. Is she doing here? He stepped inside fully, eyes dropping to the box on the table. When he saw the documents, the clippings, the photographs, his jaw locked. His skin went pale, and something cold flickered in his gaze. Where did you get that? He demanded. Lily rose to her feet, voice trembling. Andrew, why didn't you tell me?
He scoffed.
Because it's nothing. It's old lies. My mother told you this. She explained everything. No, Lily whispered. She said people made things up. But these are real documents. Court documents. His mask cracked. Not shattered, cracked. Andrew turned to me, venom shaking his voice. You had no right. You don't get to storm into our lives. I didn't storm anywhere, I said softly. I walked through a door my daughter opened. Lily's eyes flicked between us, confusion and fear warring inside her. Andrew, why did you ask me to push my mom away? The room froze. Andrew blinked, caught off guard. Then he laughed once, cold, controlled, and stepped closer to her. Because she's holding you back, he said. Because she makes you emotional. Because she knows, I said quietly, cutting through his words like a whisper of truth. His head snapped toward me. What did you say? She knows how to see people. I continued, my voice steady. She knows when someone is twisting her daughter into a version that's easier to control. Andrew's jaw flexed. Lily staggered back a step. Andrew, is that true? He didn't answer her.
He answered me.
You should have stayed away, he hissed. I was going to fix that. After the wedding, she wouldn't have depended on you at all. I would have made sure of it. Lily gasped. Soft, reflective moment. She pressed her hand to her mouth, the realization sinking into her bones. I could see it, the unraveling of trust, the quiet collapse of the world she thought she was building. Andrew, she whispered, voice trembling, you are going to cut my mother out of my life? Lily, he snapped. We're starting our own family. You don't need her hovering. I wasn't hovering, I said softly. I was loving. His head whipped toward me, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't a battle. It was a truth finally opening its eyes. Lily stepped back toward the couch, staring at the documents again, the clippings shaking in her hands. I need time, she whispered. I need space. Andrew lunged forward, reaching for her wrist. No, he barked. You don't get confused by this. I rose from the couch before he could touch her. My voice was calm, almost frighteningly steady. Let her go.
He stopped.
Something in my tone, or maybe in my eyes, made him freeze. For a long moment, the room held its breath. Then Lily said, Mom, can I stay with you tonight? Andrew stepped back as if she'd hit him. No, he snarled. You are not running to her. Not after everything we've planned. Lily looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw the moment something inside her broke cleanly, decisively. She grabbed her purse, her phone, and the box. Goodbye, Andrew. His face twisted. You'll be back. They always come back. But she didn't answer. We walked out together. Not running. Not hiding. Just walking. A mother and daughter, stepping into truth. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The lake was still, wrapped in soft lavender light. I went to start the kettle when I heard it. A knock on my porch.
Soft.
Uncertain.
Desperate.
I opened the door. There she was. Lily. Still in her rehearsal day clothes. Hair messy. Face tear-streaked. Hands shaking. "Mom," she whispered, voice breaking. "I didn't know. I didn't see it. I'm so—" She didn't finish. She just fell into my arms, crying like she hadn't cried in years. Micro cliffhanger. As I held her, I didn't know what the day ahead would bring, only that the truth had finally reached her, and everything from here would change. When I opened the door and found Lily standing there in her wrinkled rehearsal day clothes, her hair blowing across her face in the early morning wind, my heart did something I hadn't felt in years. It opened and broke at the same time. She didn't speak at first. She just stepped forward like a child who'd walked too far in the dark and finally found the one porch light left on for her. The moment her head touched my shoulder, I felt her whole body give out in a shaking breath. "Mom," she whispered, her voice thin, raw. "I didn't know. I didn't see it. I'm so sorry." I didn't let her finish. I wrapped my arms around her the way I did when she was 5 and had come home crying after losing her first friend. I held her with no questions, no scolding, no "I told you so," because the truth was, I'd missed her just as much as she'd missed me. And grief doesn't need correction. It needs comfort. We stood there for a long moment, the sunrise brushing gold across the lake behind us, the world quiet except for her soft sobs. When she finally pulled back, her cheeks were streaked, her eyes swollen, and she looked more like my little girl than she had in years. "Come inside, sweetheart," I said gently. "Let's get you warm." Inside, she sat at the small kitchen table, still clutching the wooden box to her chest like something she wasn't ready to set down. I made tea the way she'd always liked it. Honey, not sugar, just a little milk. She watched me with an expression so tender it made my throat close. I think it reminded her of a time before Andrew's voice started rewriting her own. She wrapped her hands around the mug and stared at the steam rising from it. "Mom, he got so angry last night," she whispered. He kept saying I was being manipulated, that you planned this, that you wanted to ruin everything." I sat across from her, folding my hands in my lap. "And what did you feel?" She swallowed hard, like I'd finally woken up, and like he was terrified that I had. That hurt to hear, but not in the way she feared. It hurt because it was true, and because I knew how fear can twist people into shapes they never should have become. I let her talk. Slowly, carefully, she told me about the past months, how Andrew had framed her choices as preferences, how he steered her conversations, corrected her stories, rephrased her sentences. How he'd call me overbearing with a laugh, just gentle enough to make her feel silly for defending me. And how somewhere along the way, she stopped noticing the strings tied to her wrists. He wanted to control the wedding, she said. He wanted to control what I wore, what I said, who I invited. He even told me to use his mother's vows because mine sounded too sentimental. Her voice cracked again. I thought he was helping. I thought that's what good partners do, make things easier. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Good partners don't shrink you. She nodded, tears threatening again. A soft, reflective moment filled the room then. She glanced at her father's letter, still inside the box, and touched it softly, like she was touching him. Dad would have seen it sooner, she whispered. Your father would have loved you through it, I said. The same way I am. We don't punish you for where you've been. We're just grateful you found the door out. Her eyes closed, and she breathed shakily. We spent the morning going through the documents again, line by line. Lily didn't flinch this time. She wasn't confused. She wasn't frightened. She was clear, and clarity made her stronger by the hour. Around noon, after the tea had gone cold and the sunlight stretched across the floor in long pale stripes, she finally said the words she'd been circling. I don't want to marry him. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I only nodded slowly and said, "All right, sweetheart. Then let's handle this the right way."
And we did.
Quietly, gently, without scenes, without shouting, without giving anyone the spectacle they secretly wanted. Lily drafted a message to Andrew, steady and polite, letting him know she would not be attending the wedding rehearsal that evening, that she needed space, that the engagement was officially over. She didn't accuse him. She didn't justify herself. She didn't scream about betrayal. She simply stepped out of his narrative. And that did more damage than 1,000 confrontations ever could. He called her 11 times. She didn't answer. Then he called me twice, the second time leaving a cold, shaking voicemail accusing me of poisoning his fiancé against him. But his anger hit nothing. It slid off the quiet we'd wrapped around ourselves like a shield. Soft justice always confuses people who've built their power on noise. By late afternoon, Lily said she wanted to report some of the fraudulent filings she discovered in Andrew's desk, papers he'd left out, assuming she'd never question them. She'd taken photos that night when he was yelling, the way frightened people sometimes do, without realizing why. We sat together at my computer and submitted the documents to his employer's ethics department. Nothing dramatic. No threats. Just facts.
Dates.
Screenshots. Transaction lists.
Truth.
Silently delivered. I watched Lily press send, her hand trembling, her breath tight. But when it was done, she exhaled in a long, shaky sigh. Not relief. Not pride.
Peace.
Later that evening, while we ate soup in the living room, her phone buzzed with a notification. Internal review initiated. She read quietly. They'll be conducting interviews. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just whispered, "I didn't know how much I needed accountability until now." That was the moment I knew my daughter wasn't broken. She was rebuilding herself. And I didn't do it for her. She did it for herself. As the light outside dimmed and the lake turned soft blue, she curled onto the couch beside me with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. For the first time in months, she rested her head on my arm. We sat like that for a long time, the kind of silence only love can make comfortable. At one point, she said softly, "Mom, I'm sorry I let him come between us. I'm sorry I believed him when he said you were the problem." I turned to her and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Sweetheart, you owe me no apology. Love can cloud the clearest eyes. And manipulation is slow. It creeps in. All that matters is you found your way back home." She blinked quickly, and I could see she was still processing the truth of it. Healing is slow, too. But she was starting. Before bed, she opened the wooden box one more time, lifting the locket with delicate fingers. The little gold heart swung lightly from its chain, catching the warm lamplight. She held it against her palm, running her thumb across its surface like she was remembering all the years she'd worn it. Then she looked up at me, her eyes soft and certain. "Will you put it on me?" she whispered. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I took the locket from her hand, and she turned around, lifting her hair the way she did when she was little. My hands weren't as steady as they once were, but I fastened the clasp gently, letting the chain settle against her collarbone. She touched it with a small smile. But then she surprised me. "Wait," she whispered, turning back around. "This time let me do it." She unclasped the necklace, then purposefully closed it again with her own hands, her fingers steady and sure. A symbolic act. A quiet vow. A reclaiming of herself. My throat tightened as she looked at me. "I'm choosing my path now," she said softly. "Not his." I couldn't have been prouder. Later, as she settled into the guest room, still wearing the locket, I stepped onto the porch. The lake was dark and calm, stretching out under the moon like a blanket of silver silk. I breathed in the cool night air, letting gratitude settle into my bones. Soft justice. Quiet revenge. Peace won not by force, but by choosing truth over fear. And as I stood there, I knew this wasn't a story about a ruined wedding. It was a story about a mother's love meeting a daughter's rediscovery of her own voice. A story about letting silence be louder than outrage. A story about stepping into the light softly, but surely. When I went back inside, Lily was already asleep, curled against the pillow, her breathing slow and even. She looked safe, truly safe, in a way she hadn't looked in months. I closed her door gently and whispered into the quiet hallway, "Welcome home, sweetheart." If this story touched you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop a single word in the comments, maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.